AITA for refusing to let my mother-in-law hold my baby after she told my husband to get a paternity test. I'm 28 years old, and my husband, Daniel, 30, and I have been married for 4 years. We met in college, got married after we graduated, and just like any other couple, we went through the normal highs and lows of life. When we decided to start a family, I was over the moon. We were both so excited to welcome our first child into the world. It was a dream come true. After all, who doesn't look forward to that first pregnancy, the baby shower, the nursery preparations, and then, finally, holding your baby in your arms? Everything was going perfectly. I had a relatively easy pregnancy, with only the usual discomforts that most expectant moms face. Daniel and I were thrilled, eagerly counting down the days until our baby girl would arrive. I didn't think much about the challenges that might lie ahead. We were surrounded by support. Family and friends were all genuinely excited about the arrival of our little one. But then there was my mother-in-law. From the very beginning, I knew there was tension between us. She was never overly warm or welcoming, and she'd often make these passive-aggressive remarks about me. Most of the time, I tried to let it slide. After all, I wasn't the only woman who'd marry their son, and some mothers just have a hard time letting go. Still, there were moments when I felt like she didn't like me, and I couldn't understand why. One of her favorite things to say, especially when Daniel and I were first married, was that I trapped her son. At first, I didn't know how to respond to this, so I just let go. But over time, it started to sting. It felt as though she was implying I wasn't good enough for him, or that I was somehow deceitful for wanting to marry him. It hurt more than I cared to admit, but I tried to be the bigger person. Things didn't improve once we got pregnant. If anything, it only got worse. She started making more remarks about the baby, jokes that were far from funny. What if the baby isn't even Daniel's? She'd laugh. At first, I thought she was joking. I even laughed it off, thinking it was just a weird way for her to get attention. But as time passed, it became clear that she wasn't joking. This wasn't just a quip or a sarcastic comment. It was something deeper. She genuinely seemed to question the legitimacy of my pregnancy, my relationship with Daniel, and even the future of our family. She would make these comments around family gatherings, often in front of other people, which left me feeling humiliated and exposed. "Are you sure that's Daniel's baby?" she'd ask. I mean, you never know these days. Again, it was always framed as a joke, but the underlying tone was clear. She didn't trust me. And it wasn't just the comments. She made subtle digs, insinuating that I wasn't a good enough partner for Daniel, and that my pregnancy wasn't as legitimate as it should be. I didn't know how to handle it. There were times I'd cry in private, feeling hurt and isolated, but I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. After all, Daniel was my husband, and I trusted him. I thought he would protect me and stand up for me, but the truth was he didn't always see how deeply it was affecting me. He'd brush it off and say things like, "That's just how my mom is. She's always been like that. Don't take it personally." But how could I not take it personally? I was carrying his child. This was supposed to be one of the happiest times of our lives, but instead, I felt like I was being constantly attacked and questioned by his mother. It was as if nothing I did was good enough for her, and no matter what, I could never measure up to her standards. Then, 2 days after I gave birth, things took a turn for the worse. I had just given birth to our beautiful baby girl. The labor was intense, and it had taken a lot out of me, but holding my baby in my arms made everything worth it. Daniel and I were overwhelmed with love and joy. This little girl was everything we dreamed of, and I couldn't wait to start our new life as a family of 3. But my joy was short-lived when I saw a text on Daniel's phone from his mom. The text read, "You should get a DNA test. You never know these days." My heart sank. I felt the blood drain from my face as I read the words over and over again. A DNA test? After everything we'd been through, after all the excitement and love, she was questioning whether my baby was even her grandson's? I felt betrayed, humiliated, and crushed. Here I was, vulnerable, recovering from giving birth, and she was making this horrendous suggestion. Daniel was furious when he saw the text. He immediately sent his mom a reply, telling her how disgusting her comment was and that there was no doubt in his mind that this baby was his. He told her that she had no right to question me or our child. He was angry, and I could see the hurt in his eyes as he explained how much his mom's comment had upset him. But she didn't back down. Instead, she tried to play it off, claiming that she was just looking out for him and that it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big deal? How could she say that? How could she dismiss the hurt she caused so easily? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just an isolated incident. This was part of a bigger pattern of disrespect and hurtful behavior. She had been undermining me from the beginning, making me feel like I wasn't good enough for her son, and now she was questioning the legitimacy of our child. How could I ever trust someone who had disrespected me like that? A few days later, she called to say that she wanted to come meet the baby. And here's where I drew the line. I told Daniel that his mother would not be holding our baby. I couldn't even look at her the same way after everything that had happened. If she wanted to question whether my child was even hers to love, then she didn't get the privilege of holding her. If she couldn't show me the respect I deserved as a mother, then I wasn't going to allow her anywhere near my child. Daniel understood why I was upset, but he wanted to avoid making things worse with the rest of the family. He said we should let her come just once so that she wouldn't play the victim. He was worried that if we refused, the whole family would turn against us. He didn't want to deal with the fallout. But I couldn't let this go. I couldn't pretend like nothing happened. This wasn't just some trivial issue. It was about trust, respect, and boundaries. I told him I wasn't willing to just let it slide. I needed her to understand that her actions had consequences. And of course, she cried to everyone in the family. She told them that I was keeping her granddaughter from her, and that I was punishing her over a harmless question. Some of the family members tried to convince me that I was overreacting. They said I should be the bigger person and let her hold the baby. They said that holding on to grudges wouldn't solve anything. But it wasn't about a grudge. It wasn't about being petty or dramatic. It was about standing my ground and protecting my child. It was about setting boundaries with someone who had shown me no respect. I wasn't going to let her make me feel small anymore. The truth is, I've never been someone who likes confrontation. I've always tried to keep the peace. But this time, I couldn't stay quiet. I couldn't let her walk all over me or my child. And no matter what anyone says, I know I made the right decision. I can't let someone who disrespected me and my baby hold her as if nothing happened. So, now I'm asking, AITA for refusing to let my mother-in-law hold my baby after everything she's said and done? Some people think I'm being too harsh, but I feel like I'm standing up for myself and my daughter. What do you think?